Welcome back. It is always a good day. When I wake up, I give thanks, and I know that today is a day that I am fortunate to introduce you to another very intriguing human being on the planet doing some really powerful work. So I am going to introduce you to Lindsay Percival. I hope I pronounced that right. It is lindsaypercival.com if you want to follow along or you hear something she says and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to speak to this woman. You can go right to her website. Lindsay is a journalist. She is a mother, a wife, a broadcaster for the BBC. She's a psychotherapist, and she made a pivot after a big spiritual quest to bring in mediumship and mentorship. And she's whipped it all together into this fabulous career. And she really does a lot of great work with women. So stay with me. We are going to have a heck of a show today on The Next Room. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Lindsay Percival. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jane. It's absolutely fantastic to be with you. Thank you.
Well, I'm really happy when people sort of discover the podcast that I do and discover me because it always makes me feel like, okay, there are people listening out there and there is a reason for me doing this show because I think, and you can probably speak to this as well, uh, as a woman on the planet trying to make a difference with the voice that I have. Um, Sometimes you feel like you're kind of in a little room talking to yourself. And I go through that a lot. Like, am I making a difference? Am I really giving people an opportunity to express themselves? And the most important thing for me is that if I can literally help a human being move forward on their journey while they're here on the planet, then I feel like job well done. So, but I don't always feel like that because we don't get the feedback that we need sometimes. So, talk to me about how this very highly educated woman goes from being a broadcaster with the BBC, which is highly respectable job. I mean, you got to see the Berlin Wall come down, I believe, and reported on that. What preceded that career and made you take this pivot into what you're doing today?
So I want to just go back very briefly to what you said about how people find you and answer that first, because the way I found you, and I believe we are guided to people to kind of collaborate with, to help us, to inspire us, because what took me into my journey into mediumship was the loss of my mum. And the loss of my mum, really, and the absolute tangible evidence that I had that she was with me is really what prompted that whole spiritual shift and focus in my work. You see, so there are reasons that you and I are talking today. But just to go back to what you were saying about journalism and then psychotherapy, and then the mediumship and how it all came to be. I mean, it's quite simple. My job has been listening to people's stories and listening to people's stories, listening to tales of tragedy and tales of triumph, and being fascinated in what it is about the human spirit that enables us to overcome. So even though people think, well, you've had a very varied career, to me, I'm doing the same thing, just with a different hat on, in you like. I'm helping people to overcome their challenges and to step into the power and the potential of who they truly are.
Wow. That's good, Lindsay. That's good. And you are right. I do think that there's so much interconnection as we are here on the planet. You hear those buzzwords, we're all one, we're all connected. And I don't think it's a fallacy. I really believe that there's just this awesome, loving, guiding energy that is bringing us all together, so that we can work together to hopefully achieve some peace while we're here, and some understanding. So you lost your mom. I love that you say mom. When did your mother cross over to the next room?
So my mum passed to spirit in 1996. So I was about 28 years old. I was already working as a journalist. And at the time I was living in Prague and working for Radio Free Europe. So I was a Russian analyst and I was looking at all of the transitions in Eastern and Central Europe after the Berlin Wall, and reporting on those events. And at the same time, my mother back in the UK was reaching the end of her life. And sadly, those precious last moments, I was on a telephone line to the hospital, but I wasn't actually physically with her in person. And that troubled me greatly for a great number of years. So I came to understand through it this process of complicated grief, traumatic grief, where we don't actually get to say goodbye in the way that we would like to. And that really stayed with me. And at the time, being busy with my career and moving around and doing the first democratic elections in Slovenia, in the Baltic republics. It was time of incredible change and excitement. And also being in the press office in St Petersburg, which was Leningrad, which where I was based, with Vladimir Putin, who was
Wow.
deputy mayor. And how that came to be with what's all transpired since, that's been part of my journey too.
Wow. Couple thoughts. Boy, we are never old enough to say goodbye to our mothers. It just doesn't work like that. I was 49 and here you are 28, and my heart is like reaching out to you, woman to woman. I'm like, oh, that's way too young to lose your mom. Because my daughter right now is 29. And so I'm thinking, oh, no, 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 no. My daughter Betty, she needs me. I can't go anywhere yet. Um, we're never, ever ready for that transition.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing that comes to me with this thought is you you rose up. You took this sadness, this grief, and you decided, what am I going to do with this, and how can I use this to help someone else through their situation and through their grief. Wow, this is really, really good. So you're a psychotherapist, you are a medium, you're a mentor. How did you mold it all together? Because those are ostensibly two different worlds.
Yeah, well, as you said about our lives being divinely guided, because if we look back through our lives, we can trace some common thread that seems to weave its way through the whole of it. So, um, moving from Russia to live in Prague, and work for Radio Free Europe, I then had my children. I've got 3 children. My mom never saw any of them because she passed away. In fact, the last time I saw my mom was on my wedding day and the days after that. And I
Wow.
didn't see her in this life again, you see. So I lost her at such really a crucial moment when, as you know, as a mom as well, when you're giving birth, those are the times where lots of things come to you about your own childhood and you can't ask, well, mom, how was it, for you? How was this? How was that? How the other? So I lost that reference point. But of my two, middle child and my youngest child, both of them had laryngitis as babies, and that can be potentially fatal, because the windpipe becomes compressed, and it's a very serious condition requiring hospital treatment. So at that time, when my youngest daughter was maybe about 6 months, I was very aware of a healing energy that came in the palms of my hands, and the palms of my hands would turn red, they would be tingling, and I was just aware that as I stood over her cot, that there was another presence with me, and that I couldn't describe exactly, but I just knew it was an energy coming through me, which I now know through my mediumship we call overshadowing, and that was coming from the spirit world. So my journey really to my mediumship came through this direct, if you like, ability that opened up. And then I kind of searched and Googled, as we all do, what's spiritual healing, what's this, what's that, and I came across Reiki. So my
Mm.
journey into mediumship came through my Reiki practice, because the healer and mediumship is healing too, but let's say that healing practice. So nothing was planned. It's an unexpected journey. And I've had to embrace it and make those kind of cognitive leaps as I go along and kind of catch up with what was happening.
Mm.
So yeah.
I like it. I like that a lot. So when this tingling and your palms are getting red and everything, did you at the time, you go to Reiki, but at the time, were you able to put your hands on your children and help them? Like,
Yeah,
did you even
because
have that
it,
thought?
yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to heal them with my own two hands.
It was just, I mean, I'm sure that we all do this as mums anyway. What do? Your child bumps their knee, they fall down, you pick them up and you rub it better. So we all do this.
You're
Um,
right.
I
You're
don't see
absolutely
this as
right.
some extra magical special thing. I wouldn't want to
Right.
portray it in that way. We all do it, and it's an extension of the love and the care and the desire to help that we feel. So it was just automatic. I did what was the obvious thing.
Right. You're right about that. When our son was a little boy, he grew really fast. Like he's a very big man now. He's 6'3", but when he was little, he went through a lot of growing pains and he would have these really bad headaches in the middle of the night and he would yell out for me. And of course, I'd bolt across the hall into his room. And what I did, well, at first I put a cold compress on him, but then I would take my hands and put it on his forehead and I would pull it out and I would throw it on the floor and then I would stamp my feet. And he would start laughing and he thought that was so funny. And I would say, headache's all gone. It's on the floor. It's gone. And I would do this. And remarkably, his headaches always went away. And then he just grew out of that phase and never had them again. So you are absolutely right. Every mother on the planet has used her healing powers that she didn't even call it. You don't have to name it anything. It's not voodoo. It's not weird. It's just our innate ability to take what we have inside of us that is love and project it outward and then help those that we care so deeply for. So that's beautiful. I'm so glad you're stripping this down and not making it this woo-woo complicated
No,
situation.
really not. It is intuitive, it's natural, it's in all of us. And we don't have to call it energy clearing or have a special ritual. If some people need that, that's fine. But I've never felt a need to have a kind of a special, anything around it, just to treat it as a natural ability. And to me, it makes perfect common sense. And where that troubles other people's reality, that's for them to investigate. My life showed me these things. And I always say, in a very British way, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Let's talk about how you have taken all of these pieces of your puzzle, your communications background, the broadcasting, the psychotherapist, the mentorship. Let's talk about what you're currently doing and what really lights you up from the inside, Lindsay.
So, what really lights me up from the inside is to talk about the soul, and to come from that soulful place, which is really the center of our being, because I really feel that with all the chaos and the transition and everything that's happening in our world today, we need to be able to access more of this stuff and quickly, and not at a huge cost that really excludes people who are naturally gifted and want to work in this way. So to me, it's about the soul. To me, it's about intuition. Intuition is the language of our soul. And very much as you spoke then, Jane, about your son and how you kind of took his headache away and threw the energy down and stamped on it, when we're in that natural flow, then we do these things, don't we? We don't have to second guess. We get out of our way. We get out of our overthinking minds. And so the problem that I encountered with psychotherapy, now my particular training is transpersonal psychotherapy. So let's say it's a holistic model, but it's integrative. So it studies all the different approaches to psychotherapy, but also suggests that there's something beyond the personal. So my problem that I encountered with psychotherapy is sometimes it gets very I don't know, somehow serious, somehow rigid, somehow squelching out the spiritual dimension to it, that when we connect with that and speak from that soulful place, the right words emerge, the right thing to say in the right moment, or to not say it, because sometimes it's about being silent, and
Amen.
sometimes it's about simply being with another person in the depth of their pain and holding them safely.
Mm.
And so the things that I learned in my spiritual practice, I wanted to bring in and to apply. And of course, that's controversial for some people, especially in the more, let's say, analytical aspects of psychotherapy. So for me, it's all about the soul.
Okay. Let's talk about the courses that you have, or the way that individuals that are listening to you right now can go on to lindsaypercival.com and connect. And what exactly do you offer, and how does this work? Like, how are you reaching out to help people?
Yeah, so my program, which is called Soul Power, it's an online program because, I wanted to reach out to people across the pond, to people in different countries, and Zoom still through this experience of COVID, which enabled us mediums and therapists and everybody who could access Zoom to kind of come together. So it's an online 12-month mentorship, and in it I'm sharing some of my experience and understanding, especially around things like spiritual bypass, because my experience of trauma, of grief, of loss quickly took me to that spiritual place, but I didn't necessarily have a language, a words, or even ability to start to really unpack things that had impacted me. So we don't do our psychological inner work. And I think that this is a great problem for people who are not aware that we need a foundation within ourselves. It's not just about going to the spiritual. It's not about just going to the divine in whatever way that is for you. We have to look quite deeply at ourselves as that vessel and refine that vessel. So my program is, how do you bring your personal power, and in this case as a woman, it's a program for women's, and your spiritual power to be in your authentic power, because it is about authenticity. When we're in our truth, when we're speaking our truth, that's when we're the most connected. So it's a practical program, but it also has a lot of content of things that I've learned about, experienced, and practiced myself. So I walk my talk.
Good for you. You got to walk your talk. Um, I also noticed on your website that you have retreats. which I think that's such a great thing to do, is to meet up with individuals. What is happening with your retreats, and when are they, and how can people, learn more about them?
Exactly. So I moved house in March to a most magical part of the UK, which is called the New Forest. So that's close to the south coast. And in the New Forest, we have wild ponies, we have wild deer, we have wild pigs, we have wild everything.
Wow.
And it really is a most amazing place where you can really be in touch with nature, be in touch with yourself. So my retreats are just on the edge of the New Forest, in a very beautiful market town with medieval streets called Romsey. And it's most known, I think, or one of the things that's most known about it is the Norman Abbey that's there with quite spectacular, stained glass windows and all of that. But the retreat center is just behind it, and it's called the Wisdom Center.
Mm, I
Um,
like
I
that.
ser- I searched the New Forest kind of high and low, looking for the right place, and you have to go with your gut. And when I landed there, I thought, that's it. And it's actually a ministry of the Daughters of Wisdom, and they are a Catholic order of nuns. And you
Mm.
would say to yourself, how does this very traditional religious, order of sisters, how can that be so welcoming? Well, because what they believe in is divine everyday wisdom. So at that center, there's Reiki, there's yoga, there's meditation. And I just thought, wow, that's me. That's got to be me.
Wow.
And I was so thrilled. It has a beautiful labyrinth outside in a rose garden that you can walk as a meditative practice. And so I've called my retreats soul care. And
Okay.
I think that we need that space to be able to step into that stillness of our soul.
Wow. Lindsay, I love nuns. And I was not raised Catholic, but I married into a Catholic family, and Sister Mary Faith, which is AKA Aunt Teresa, was absolutely by far one of the most peaceful, loving, compassionate, accepting human beings I have ever met in my life. So I'm a big fan of nuns. So I get it. I totally get the pivot, because there's these women that turn their life over to a higher power of their understanding. And all they are here to do is to educate and to teach us love and peace and compassion and kindness. So I'm a big fan. So that resonated right away with me. I thought, wow, this place sounds magical. How
Absolutely
wonderful.
magical. And I think the key word as well for me that you said there, well, you said many, but I think one of the key words is accepting,
Yes.
because it is about being with people who are on a different faith journey and being in that space where we're not here to judge. There are many roads up the mountain. And it's not that I necessarily need people to think about mediumship or even access spiritualism, which is a religious kind of approach in which we practice our mediumship too. It's not about that. It's about human beings coming together in a peaceful setting and really exploring what is our contribution to this world. And that's what I want to help with.
Mm, I love it. If you want to go online, you can check Lindsay out at lindsaypercival.com. She has got her soul power, soul care, the retreats, everything. You can read all about her. Um, I did have another thought about that acceptance thing. It's sort of like when people say, we need to be more tolerant. Tolerant, to me, it's like, I'll put up with you. I'm tolerant of you. I think we can dispose of that. We need across the board acceptance, regardless of what your belief system, your faith, your political affiliation, no matter if you are a believer or a non believer. We have to accept one another right where we stand for us to be able to really move forward and stop with all of the petty divisiveness right now. It's like, ugh, it's so heavy. And you're right, there's so much chaos, and transition is where we are right now. We have a few minutes left. I've absolutely loved this. I'm going to go on record right now and say I want you to come back on because I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So we will wrap up for today. I'll give you the floor, and then I do want you to come back on as soon as your schedule clears and you're able to do so. So, Lindsay, give me your final thoughts or something that you would like the Next Room audience to know.
So my thoughts, Jane, are quite simple. We're all needed here. And each and every one of us has a unique gift that we need to bring out into the world. And women sometimes are not good at helping women do that. And so my program, which is about how we step into our authentic power, where we're not competitive, where we're not trampling over each other, we can genuinely do what it is that we say to do, that we want to do, which is bring good into this world in whichever way that means. And so that's what I say, we're all needed here.
Well, you're just wonderful. And I am so grateful that the breadcrumbs led you and I together. This has really been very, very eye-opening, and I'm just so happy to have you on the show. You've been listening, watching The Next Room. Thank you for joining me in my community, the Facebook page. You guys are great. I mean, it's just, occasionally there's some troublemakers, and I just block them. It's no big deal. But the rest of you that are there for the right reasons. We are here to elevate one another, to share our peace, to share our compassion and love for one another. And that is the message that I love to spread every single day. If you can be anything on the planet, please be kind. Thank you for tuning in. Share it with your friends, download. If you hear something that you like what Lindsay said, go to her website and check her out because she is the real deal. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Next Room with Jane Asher. I will catch you again next week.